Good morning. Sunday, the 20th of November. And I greet you in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Spirit. Today, I would like to reflect with you on beginnings and endings, or perhaps the other way around, endings and beginnings. If you happen to be a South African, born South African, and now living in the Northern Hemisphere, you become aware of quite a few differences. The one difference is that Christmas in the Southern Hemisphere is in the summer, while in the Northern Hemisphere, Christmas is in the cold and the dark of winter. Another difference you get used to is, or have to get used to, is that the year, especially the school or the academic year, doesn't start in January as in the Southern Hemisphere, but it starts in August or September. So there's a lot of differences in terms of beginnings and endings. And my dear friend, we all share different types of beginnings and endings. The one is New Year, which is the end of an old year and the beginning of a new year. The second one is our birthdays, which is the beginning of a new year in our own life story. Academic years, but this Sunday is another end as well. This is, in church terms, the last Sunday of the year, because next Sunday is Advent and it's the beginning of a new church year, a new celebration of the Christ story. So today, I invite you to reflect with me on beginnings or endings and beginnings. There's a beautiful story in the collection of the Desert Fathers, a short story. As you know, those stories were almost just one-liners. And this one said, "It was said about Abba Poemen that every day he made a new beginning." So for us as a church, next Sunday is a new beginning. Perhaps you will celebrate a new beginning at your birthday. What, my dear friend, is the new beginning and perhaps the ending that you and I can make? And with this in mind, I would like to do two readings. The one is both is from the very well-known and beautiful letter of St. Paul to the Romans. The one is chapter 7, verse 21. He says, "So I find this law is at work. When I want to do what is good, what is evil is the only choice I have. My inner being delights in the law of God, but I see a different law at work in my body. A law that fights against the law which my mind approves of. It makes me a prisoner of the law of sin which is at work in my body. What an unhappy man I am! Who will rescue me from this body that is taking me to death? Thanks be to God, who does this through our Lord Jesus Christ." And then the next reading from chapter 12, where he says, verse 1, "So then, my brothers, because of God's great mercy to us, I appeal to you, offer yourselves as a living sacrifice to God, dedicated to his service and pleasing to him. This is the true worship that you should offer. Do not conform yourselves to the standards of this world, but let God transform you inwardly by a complete change of your mind. Then you will be able to know the will of God, what is good and is pleasing to Him and is perfect. So, my dear friend, when was the last time you had a new beginning? And would you like to have a new beginning? In these two small readings from this letter of St. Paul, he speaks in a very personal way. He speaks about his own struggle, how he always wants to do what is good, but he always finds in himself a different law. And then he speaks these words, "What an unhappy man I am," in this translation. What an unhappy man I am. It's almost as though he says, I'm yearning, I'm longing for a new beginning, but how can that happen? And then he says, but God does this through Jesus Christ. And the other reading, he speaks about a new beginning as well. He says, but let God transform you by transforming your mind. It's almost by transforming the way you're thinking. So I would like to give myself and you 3 words for today. And the first word is change. I came to realize that people, and I am who I am, we are just who we are. And there's certain traits of our personalities that will just never change. Doesn't matter how much faith we have, how much we believe. We are made to be who we are. Sometimes I think a lot of people who come to church think that God or the church wants them to change. No. The only thing that can change is our own way of thinking. What Paul says, let God change you by changing your mind, by changing your way of thinking. And that's a new beginning. It's something that can start now. It's almost like the very loaded word enlightenment. It could happen any moment, and it could happen every moment. Every moment can be a new beginning for you and for me. So that's the first word, is change. It's not a changing of our personality, but it's a way of changing our way of thinking. Now, there's a lot to be said about that, but just leave it there. Let's think about change and the change that can happen now in every one of us, in you and in me. The second word is the word grace, which Paul speaks about. And he says, what an unhappy man am I? But thanks be to God, by His grace, he says that is possible. So that change is possible. That new way of thinking is possible. And let us enjoy the abundance of grace that comes to us. It's almost as abundant as the rain outside on this very morning. It's like jumping into the water of a swimming pool. The grace is abundance. Wherever and whenever we're at the point of change, that grace is just available and it's there. And then lastly, he speaks about it. He says, thanks be to God. And in the other reading as well, he says, but thanks to God, this is possible. And to live with a gratitude, because it's not by our trying, it's by God's gift. And we can say thanks because we already have received that gift. So, if we speak about endings and new beginnings, today can be a new beginning for you and for me. And may it be. May it not only be the beginning of a new Christmas and a new church year, but of a new life, of a new way of living, a new way of thinking. So may the newness of God's grace fill us and fill you and me with a thanksgiving in His name. And so may the grace and the love and the peace of God, Father, Son, and Spirit be with you now and always on this new beginning.